You know, up in the mountains, there's this incredible force at work every single day. It's an invisible river of air that carves its way through the landscape. And what's really amazing is that it's not random at all. It's a predictable daily cycle, like a massive engine, powered by nothing but the sun. So let's dive in and see how it works.
So let me ask you this. How do you navigate a powerful river that you can't even see? A river that flows not with water, but with air, winding through canyons and over ridges. It sounds kind of like a riddle, right? But for some people, figuring it out is a matter of survival.
Well, for paraglider pilots, this is no riddle. It's their reality. Understanding this invisible river is everything. It's the difference between an amazing flight and a really, really bad day. This daily, predictable flow has a name. It's called the valley wind. So where does this invisible river even come from? Well, it all starts with the sun. Think of it like a giant thermal engine in the mountains that kicks on right on cue every single morning.
Okay, the first piece of this puzzle is something called the anabatic wind. Now, I know the name sounds a little technical, but the idea is actually super simple. It's just warm air flowing up a mountain slope during the day. This is the very first gear of our solar-powered engine kicking in. Let's break down how that happens. So first, the morning sun hits the mountain slopes and starts to warm them up. Then, the air right above those slopes heats up, gets lighter, and begins to rise. This rising air creates this little pocket of lower pressure over the mountains, which acts like a vacuum pulling in the cooler, heavier air from the plains nearby to fill the void. And that big inflow of air, well, that's our valley wind. But that's not the whole story. What makes this whole process so powerful? It's not just the sun hitting the slopes. There's another, more subtle factor that really supercharges the entire system, and it's called the volume effect. And here's why that's so important. A mountain valley, just by its shape, has way less air in it than the huge, wide-open plains. And with less air to heat up, the atmosphere inside that valley warms up much, much faster. This makes that low-pressure zone even stronger, which pulls in air from the plains with even more force. Now, as the day goes on and the sun keeps pouring in all that energy, this system doesn't just stay steady. Oh no, it accelerates. It builds and builds until it hits this powerful peak right in the middle of the afternoon. By about, say, 3 p.m., what might have been a gentle little breeze in the morning can easily turn into a steady, powerful wind of 20 to 30 kilometers per hour, sometimes even more. And that's a serious force you have to respect, especially when you're flying something as light as a paraglider. And get this, that wind can become even faster. This is because of a phenomenon that pilots know all too well, the Venturi effect. It's basically what happens when any fluid, and remember, air is a fluid, gets squeezed through a tight spot. The easiest way to picture this is the classic garden hose trick. You know, you put your thumb over the end and what happens? The water speeds up, right? It has to get through that smaller opening. Well, the exact same thing happens with air. When a valley gets narrow, the wind flowing through it is forced to accelerate. And sometimes that acceleration is dramatic. Okay, so all this science isn't just for a textbook. For a pilot, this has incredibly real practical consequences, especially when it's time to come in for a landing. So let's look at how this plays out in the real world. A pilot needs to land into the wind. Now, if they pick a landing spot where the valley is narrow, they're flying straight into that Venturi effect, into accelerating and potentially dangerous wind. The smart choice? You find a spot where the valley opens up and gets wider, because there the air has room to spread out and it slows down, just like taking your thumb off the hose. So the safety checklist for landing in a strong valley wind is built right on top of these ideas. First, always choose wide areas. Second, you set up your approach early, at the upwind end of the field, so you have plenty of room. And third, and this is a big one, you have to be ready for turbulence near the ground. And why is that? Well, because even a perfectly smooth valley wind gets all messy and chaotic down low. As that air flows over and around things like trees, houses, and hills, it tumbles and churns, creating something called mechanical turbulence. This makes those last few moments of flight the most challenging of all. But you know, any engine that runs on the sun has to shut down for the night. And as the sun sets, this huge mountain engine cools off, and the entire process we just talked about starts to run in reverse. This brings us to the flip side of the coin, the katabatic wind. It's pretty much the nighttime opposite of the anabatic wind. It's simply cold, heavy air flowing down the mountain slopes. So once the sun is gone, the mountain slopes cool down really fast. The air right next to them gets cold too, which makes it heavier and denser. And then gravity just takes over. This cold air begins to drain right down the slopes and out of the valleys, flowing back towards the plains. The invisible river has completely reversed its course.
Okay, so let's put it all together real quick. During the day, you have anabatic wind flowing up the slopes, and that's what drives the valley wind into the mountains. Then at night, you get katabatic wind draining down the slopes, which creates the mountain wind that flows out of the mountains. See that? It's a perfect symmetrical cycle every single day.
And I think, ultimately, this just shows that true mastery of flight isn't about just handling the controls. It's about learning to read the air, about seeing these invisible patterns and learning how to work with the powerful, predictable rhythms of the natural world, not against them.
It really leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? We've just learned the language of one invisible river. So what other hidden patterns are flowing all around us, every day, just waiting to be understood? Thanks for watching.